Good afternoon. Okay, the company I want to discuss is going to be Johnson and Johnson, and obviously I'm sure you're familiar with that company. Pretty mammoth in size, and it's also global. So the three countries that we're looking at as far as putting bids in, and the bids are going to be for information technology and engineer validation. The three countries that we're kind of more or less eyeing is going to be Mexico and also Brazil and also India. Mexico, because they do have a substantial amount of engineers, where there is a university located there in Mexico. So as far as our workforce in Mexico, there's going to be three plants that we're trying to bid for. It's going to be in Mexico, Brazil, and India. Obviously, we need information technology specialists. We're seeking for the India individuals. And as far as the engineers, we want them to come from Mexico, but also be working in Brazil. Anyhow, we are bidding for the IT and for the engineer validations, and our workforce, because we really don't have to be too, although you have to always be mindfully aware when it comes to cultural intelligence, but because we're going to go ahead and have those that live within Mexico and with India, we really will need to be more involved in regards to like managers that we'll be sending over there. The workforce employees are already going to be there from those countries that are credentialed within engineering or IT. So the workforce employees are already going to be there, but the managers that we're going to be sending there will have to somehow educate them in regards to the country that they'll be visiting, because we're going to be sending out managers, directing managers to Mexico, Brazil, and India. So they do need to become aware of customs and how to hold meetings, and even to breaks. How do these people hold breaks? And also, how do you deal with these types of individuals when it comes to training, which is going to be very important, because even though they already have that specialty, we're a company coming in to employ them and hire them to do business for us. So we're going to contract them, so they're going to be new to our organization and our methodologies when it comes to the IT and to the engineering. So we're going to have to really be focused on how we're going to approach when it comes to training them. You know, are they going to be able to handle long periods of training? Are they going to be able to handle when we direct questions to them? Do we need to make sure that it's an engaging environment? Or do we need to have group settings? Or do we need to have people working individually instead of together in groups? But in thinking with India and Mexico and Brazil, I think it'll probably work out better if it's in groups versus individually. I think it'll work out better when it comes to training them. So the workforce is there, and we want to maintain the workforce there from within the country. But I think the most difficult challenge is that we're going to be having to send our managing directors over there. So we're going to have to educate them in regards to how to deal with employees or future to be employees from Mexico, Brazil, and India, how to treat them, how to handle them tactfully and diplomatically. And so I think that might be a challenge, is having our managing directors from the U.S. having to deal with these employees that are already going to be from within these three countries that I mentioned earlier. So I think once we get through the hurdle of training and managing, but I think another challenge is going to be leading. How to lead these new employees within this workforce. We're going to have challenging things to already come across, because we obviously don't know what type of training to offer these three sets of countries. But I think the managers are also going to have to deal with the issues of how are they going to manage these people. You know, how do you reprimand? How do you encourage? You know, should we offer merit raises? Is there appraisal? Should we do quarterly evaluations? What's going to benefit not only the organization, but I think we also need to think about what's going to benefit these employees, because obviously they're not on U.S. soil, they're on their own soil, their own country. But how's it going to benefit them to be working for our organization? How are they going to feel valued as employees working for a U.S. company that's on their soil, on their turf, more or less? And I guess if you really think about it, how do you go about valuing these people, which is going to be very separate in how we go about training them and managing them. But as I mentioned earlier, another issue is going to be how do you lead the type of leadership courses and classes that one has taken and one reads. Do those really apply just straight across the board globally? I don't know about that. I think you have to really take into customs. You know, it could be the language, it could be colors, it could be food, it could be the way you dress, it could be how you shake someone's hand too if you look directly at them. So that's going to be something that we have to think about, is how we're going to be able to keep these employees motivated. How can we keep them going? So it's going to be training. Have to think about how we're going to go about training them. It's also going to have to be about how we're going to manage them as well. And then lastly, how do we go about leading them? So I think probably those are going to be the three toughest challenges that we're going to have to deal with, because we do, obviously, we want to be profitable, but we also want these employees to gain something out of working for Johnson & Johnson. Even though it's contract work, it could be something that they could take away, learning, and utilize it further for themselves in the future. But as I stated earlier, like I said, we will have to take into consideration customs, speaking, anything that's going to have to deal with cultural intelligence with three separate countries. So I think it's a great idea to employ these employees that are already there within the three countries. But I think the most challenge is going to be, obviously, we're going to have to utilize managers and directors to place in these three different countries to train, to manage, and to lead these individuals to be productive, functional, and operational employees of Johnson & Johnson. But not only, again, we don't want them just to work, we also want them to learn and to be motivated. So again, we will have to take into customs, any type of practices that they have that entertains their customs. So we have to be mindful of the customs within those countries, but we also have to think about what's going to also benefit and profit the company. So if we can mesh those together, I think that we can really put together a productive workforce that can be formidable in all three countries if we continue to be mindfully aware of the customs within these three different countries when we have our managers go over there to train them and to management and to lead them. Because we do want them to be productive workers, we also want them to be motivated. And we also want to be able to evaluate and give and be able to receive feedback of what maybe we need to do better to show them that we value them as employees. So that's kind of like the company that I have in mind. Like I said, for engineers and for IT, for engineer for validations of the machines that are going to be set up, the three countries, and obviously IT coming from India. Very skilled. I think it's a good idea with the skilled workforce in all three countries. I think it could be really profitable for Johnson and Johnson and those three countries as well, and also for the workforce. I think it's a win-win situation, and I think if we just continue to be mindfully aware of their customs, I think it really help us out when it comes to training, managing, and leading these employees. Thank you.